QLAFD, the podcast, continuation, episode 2 with Natasha Ponciano. For that, a few housekeepings. Please remember to like and subscribe to YouTube. Put your comments into the comments section. We will be checking for them. Listen and download on Stitcher and Spotify. The community is growing. We'll keep you posted on more of the digital streaming platforms as they come. For right now, we're back with part 2. Part 1 was a discussion of traveling. Part 2 is where we dive deeper into the entrepreneur, Natasha. Just for prefacing, Natasha is a travel professional. She is a small business owner, community leader, yoga instructor, entrepreneur all the way around, as well as a chef, a fantastic chef as well. I can only cook by comparison. So for that, we're going to get started.
Before we get started, I have to humbly say I am a cook as well, not a chef. I'm a chef's daughter, but I am a cook, just like you. But yeah, how I got started. I used yoga as a tool at a very young age. I was on stage for most of my life, musical theater, dance, singing, and acting. And yoga was always the warm-up pre-show. So to loosen up your body, to catch your breath, things like that. I didn't really start loving and enjoying yoga as I do now until I would say around high school or college. Mm-hmm. I remember I went to a yoga class in college at University of Central Florida with my roommate at the time. And I was just enamored on how I felt afterwards. And then when I first tried my first hot yoga session, the feeling of release when I got out of that room, it was so incredible. It was immediately addicting. It was amazing. And I think just emotionally and physically, I was pushed to my edge, and that's what kept me coming back for more.
Using yoga as a warm-up, loosening your body, limbering up, it made me think, I wonder if people in the theater, as far as acting troupes actually do that as well. Because I know they do the vocal warm-ups, but in terms of loosening up your body, I don't know what they would do, but I will tell you why I thought about it. Because I have a very limited experience in high school theater when it comes down to, I was a light tech, but I was always backstage with the group, and they would make the whole group do the vocal warm-ups. So Dorico, if you're listening, I know you know what I'm talking about. But we did martial arts. I've been doing martial arts since I was 5 years old. So that is what we used to do to loosen up. It was maybe 4 or 5 of us, where everyone else would probably just do deep breaths and stretches.
Right.
But that's interesting that you started that way. I would have never thought that. What accolades do you have in terms of dance and being on stage?
So dance and being on stage, I'm vocally trained. So from a very young age, I was in vocal lessons, church choir, all the jazz. And actually my mom put me in jazz, tap, ballet when I was young. And just in high school, I was actually auditioning for the vocal department. I went to an arts academy, and I realized that, musical theater is all 3 of those things, and I love to do all 3 of those things. And so that's why I chose theater. And I never really was the strongest actress. It was more vocal is where my strong suit was. Sure. But I learned in this art academy that, having these 3 things, you don't have to be great at everything, but you can, polish yourself and find a way to kind of fake it until you make it, which now I don't say that phrase, I say fake it until you become it.
Oh, nice.
Very different, but yeah, so those are the things I have, and I've performed in, really big places, like in the Strauss Center in Tampa, over 2,000 people were there, and traveling shows, and I was on a full theater scholarship for my first 2 years in college.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I was in Glee Club. I'm kidding. Excuse me. Scale your life experiences,
Right.
But that's amazing. That's amazing. I didn't know that about you.
Yeah.
It's been maybe a year or 2 that I've known you. Yeah, a year. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's awesome. In choosing yoga, and then also understanding that you travel quite extensively, was it the fact that your work allowed you to certify in yoga internationally, or did that come later?
Well, so that's a little bit different. So the reason why I saw yoga as something different than a warm-up was when I broke my neck in 2014.
Oh, wow.
So I was in a really bad car accident. I broke my neck, and that's when I was first dabbling into yoga. So my thought, I didn't know my neck was broken. And I was like, you know what, maybe yoga will help me feel better. You know, I felt really just tight in a lot of places. I couldn't barely move. So I was like, let me go to yoga class. And when I went to the doctors, they're like, absolutely not. You have fractured your C4 and C5. If you do the wrong move, you can be paralyzed for the rest of your life. And so instead of going into a surgery where they wanted to basically fuse my neck, I chose yoga therapy instead. So from that, I was like, wow, not only is this healing me mentally, but I was going through a lot of issues on the inside, a lot of darkness that was brewing through, you know, this accident, the things that I lost through this accident. And it made me realize, like, this is not only healing me physically, but mentally I struggle with, you know, excessive control and perfectionism. And this exercise, or what I thought was an exercise at the time, brought in my life into something completely new. While yes, yoga talks a lot about acknowledging the light within you, it also, what I found grace in was acknowledging the darkness and realizing you can't really heal unless you stop pretending it doesn't hurt.
Sure, that's actually really beautiful. Again, new stuff. What style of yoga do you teach?
Where my heart is power vinyasa.
Okay.
I love letting my students know that they're stronger than they think, mentally and physically. Like, while yes, it's a very physical practice, it's also mental as well. You know, you're holding these poses, you're telling yourself you have to control your breath, control your mind. But I'm also, my 300 hour, which is a certification that I have, was based in Ashtanga, which is becoming more popular now, especially in the West. It's a set sequence, and it builds your strength. You have to be very strong to find this practice and to dedicate yourself to this practice. But yin, also hatha, which is my 200 hour, that's what it was based on, which is left and right, essentially keeping things balanced, more traditional. But my heart is in power vinyasa, and that's what I mostly teach here in Houston.
That's awesome. I did Ashtanga. Am I saying it right? How do you say it? Okay, Ashtanga.
Absolutely, Ashtanga, yes.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it, but it was just only because, you know, being with a martial arts background, I had a bit of a dynamic core, so I could hold the poses, I could take the challenges better, you know, moving and gliding into the flow. So that made more sense to me in terms of taking a challenge, because yoga is very slow, and for a person like me at that age with a short attention span, it would have been really hard for me to keep up with a slower, more methodical, you know, type of yoga flow. But that's very, very interesting. The teaching, or the styles that you actually teach. So you have a 300 hour and you have a 200 hour.
Yes.
The 300 hour is, where did you certify at?
So basically it starts with your 200 hour. 200 hour is the certification where basically anywhere in the United States or in the Western world, you have to have a 200 hour to certify you to teach publicly or to teach another student. Based on your paperwork. And then your 300 hour, cumulatively, you have 300 and 200. So your RYT, which stands for Registered Yoga Teacher, 500. So that's what I am. And then through Yoga Alliance, which is basically the umbrella of the alliance, there's hundreds of alliances through the world if you do your research, but the Yoga Alliance is mostly what the United States uses for their certifications. And so based with them, I'm an ERYT 200, which means I have experienced teacher training of 200 hours. So I've taught over 200 hours, which enables me to teach incoming yoga teachers. And my 200 hour, which was my initial training, was in Siem Reap, Cambodia, with Taboo's Yoga Studio, which was a nonprofit yoga studio. So basically most of our funds that we put in, because teacher trainings are not cheap, we built a well for a local Cambodian town nearing the main city of Siem Reap. And so in that town, there's, you know, a plaque with all of our names. I think there was about 20 to 23 of us in Siem Reap. And so that was incredible. So not only did, you know, we get to learn and broaden our minds and physical bodies, but we also got to contribute in their culture and society in some sort of way. It was like our thank you for having them host us, for that month or 3 weeks that we were there.
Sure. How long were you in Siem Reap?
Siem Reap, I was there for about a month, I want to say, 3 to 4 weeks. And then my 300 hour was Ashtanga heavy, and that was in Kathmandu, Nepal. So it was a beautiful program. It was absolutely incredible. I mean, my heart just smiles. The people in Nepal are just so grateful. And one of the things I love there is literally when you walk out, their greeting instead of saying hello is namaste. And namaste is the light in me recognizes the light within you. So literally when you're walking down the street, even if they do yoga, if they don't do yoga, namaste, namaste, just saying instead of saying hello.
Awesome.
But that program was 3 weeks in the city of Kathmandu, where we would do studio practice and meet with Ayurvedic doctors and have our Ashtanga practice every single morning. We couldn't eat breakfast until we would finish our complete standing and sitting series, which I get very hangry. So when someone tells me no, I can't eat until I finish something, it was mentally exhausting for me, because I was not only cranky, but I wanted, you want to finish these things in order to get food or to nourish yourself.
Right.
So that was 3 weeks in the city of Kathmandu, and then 3 weeks in basically an ashram in the foothills of the Annapurna Mountains in a little city. And I think there was maybe 14 people living in the city. And the reason why we were there was the owners of the studio in Kathmandu, he was from a nearby town, and because everyone was moving to the city to make money, this town was completely abandoned.
Okay.
And when he went back to visit his mom, he realized that, oh my goodness, there's nothing left here. There's one grandmother left taking care of her one home. All her family members have died off. So he wanted to bring the program there just to kind of help them create a life and survive. So that was beautiful. You would wake up to the mountains every morning.
Yeah.
You would have your masala chai, you would have, your breakfast, and basically practice and watch the sunshine as it melts the peaks of the Annapurna mountain ranges. And it was just mind-blowing.
Like you just lit up when you talked about that. And it's also life and learning through immersion, which is incredibly important, because and also, if I could just say that what you learn from a traditional place. It's not as though you went somewhere else, paid, I don't know, $1,000 and just got a certification saying, yes, you know how to do this. There's always a discussion that fitness instructors and advocates have about what you've learned, where you've learned, and then how you apply it. Seeing your photos, I have not attended any of your classes yet is the word.
Keyword.
Keyword. But seeing your photos, understanding you as a person and understanding this now, as far as where you've learned, it gives me confidence that you would be able to deliver the lesson the right way. That's always important. My background is that I learned initially, the first style that I learned was Taekwondo. And I learned Taekwondo through the South Korean Grandmaster. I felt like that was the most appropriate way to do so. When I learned Muay Thai, I learned it through Thailand, and as well as a Thai instructor in Hong Kong. Felt like it was the most appropriate thing to do. And it's not as though someone else can't do it. It's just the purity, more or less, I guess, if I'm saying it right.
Right.
And I find that amazing. It's very awesome, actually, that you were in Cambodia and Nepal, and it brings you here. So you're a yoga instructor in Houston. What's your current business? Where are you now?
So right now in Houston, I mean, that was my ode to, because my heart is in modern yoga, my heart is in that power vinyasa, and that's very much a modern take on yoga, with the style, with, adding a sort of a fitness element to a traditional practice. But that was really important to me to find the roots of yoga, in Kathmandu. That's basically the sacred land. Kathmandu and India are the places that, or not specifically Kathmandu, but that area, just in the geological areas where the first modern texts or the first known texts of yoga were found.
Sure.
But in Houston currently, I am working at a few different studios around town. Black Swan Yoga, which started in Austin. It's a community style studio where volunteers basically run the studio. Equinox, which is luxury fitness down in River Oaks. And then I work for a company called PC Fitness as well, which is they go into apartment complexes and teach yoga for the residents there. And then currently where we're standing or sitting is my own studio, Lost Lotus Yoga.
Awesome.
So a boutique studio that I've created, and I'm excited to get started.
With you now just starting your own business, your own studio, Black Swan Yoga, also Equinox, and then what was it?
PC Fitness.
PC Fitness. So you'll incorporate all of that, or are you just going to eventually become your own brand?
So I'm trying to keep my schedule as normal as possible because I've committed myself to these studios, and I really want to make this studio an experiential studio versus anything else. So I'm not going to try and focus on, jamming as many classes as I can in the day in order for me to, basically create revenue.
Sure.
I want to think of it in a different sense that this is an experience.
Sure.
So while I'm hoping that I can keep my schedule the same, the ultimate goal is, of course, to be my own boss and to do what I want to do and when I want to do it and how I want to do it.
Sure. I think you're in a unique business model, just being that you have a very niche marketplace. However, yoga in Houston is incredibly hot. As you know, there's an extremely large client base. You having about 3 different outlets for teaching the one, filtered style. How has that been since COVID?
Honestly, COVID, I use the hashtag thank you COVID all the time because COVID really made me having that time and space to think about, okay, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. I was basically just killing myself, going through the motions to figure out how can I become a full-time yoga teacher and make money and not feel like I'm scrounging for scraps, because one doesn't become a yoga teacher to make money. Yeah. If I can be completely honest, one does yoga because one, it's something that you're helping people navigate through their lives, whether it's through a physical practice or whether it's a mental practice. And so COVID really helped me realize, like, okay, this is your chance. You have all this time to yourself now that you're not teaching at these studios. What do you want to do?
Sure.
And it wasn't until my landlord actually mentioned, we knew that there was a space here, and my landlord mentioned that it used to be an old t-shirt business. And while me and Josh were not fighting for space, but it's a 1-bedroom apartment, so we don't have a lot of space. It made me realize, wow, I can create a space of my own. This is the chance that I have all this time, because it put a pause on everything.
Sure.
So COVID really, if anything, created a sense of, okay, the world is ending. What do you want to do? Follow your dreams, or else this could be your last chance.
Sure.
That you can really sit and think and navigate through your dreams. Because before I was just living and going through the motions, I was, stuffing my schedule so that I could have income, so that I could just be a teacher instead of, okay, having your own space. That wasn't really anything that I thought of in my head. I always wanted to be a lawyer so I could afford to open up my own studio.
Okay.
I never really thought that I really could, the dream seemed so far away until COVID.
But the end result, though, even though you said that you always wanted to be a lawyer, the end result was still yoga.
Right.
So it didn't really matter what you did up until that point.
Right. That's when I realized,
okay.
I think, when I was taking the LSAT and people are like, well, why do you want to become a lawyer? And it stopped being, because, my mom was in the industry, and it started becoming, so I can afford to do what I really want to do. Because growing up in a really strict Asian household, you have 2 choices, really, doctor or lawyer, take your pick.
Sure.
I was horrible at math, couldn't get through pre-med in my first 2 years of school. So I was like, all right, well, let me switch it up. Let me study English, study political science and business, and become a lawyer. And so really, I felt like I didn't have any choices. It was just kind of where I thought that I had to be. And I realized, okay, well, if your end game is something completely different, then you should just skip a step.
Well, I think that's great. Again, I've had from a consumer perspective, a similar route with yoga. you, of course, instructing it, clearly having a lot more immersed time into it. But I really enjoy those two styles. I really do. I've managed to maintain my flexibility up until this age, more or less after many muscle tears. But I'm still, working through them. How is the consumer base? Did it decline much during COVID?
I mean, it was tough because we basically had to switch to everything online
Okay.
when it came to yoga. So at first it was almost like, okay, well, there's nothing that we can do, there's no studios. And then we were like, okay, well, wait a minute, we have this platform that is social media, right? Where we can record live classes, we can still have a yoga class. It doesn't feel the same to me, but you still have that opportunity to be on screen with your teacher. Mm-hmm. And that was, at that time, I'm sure you remember, we took what we could get,
It's true.
Whatever, I mean, we were so isolated from everything that anything that was like, oh, this is new and exciting, and this was a sense of normalcy that we used to have is now capable. We can do it now. It's like literally at the palm. It's at our fingertips.
Yeah.
We have it at our fingertips.
Right.
So I think that it really did. I mean, still classes aren't at full capacity, even though Texas is crazy. And right now we're at 100% capacity. And, you have the option to wear a mask, not wear a mask, whatever that is. But a lot of studios are still maintaining their rules that they created during COVID. And I think that's important because we want everyone to feel comfortable when they're practicing.
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, as a fellow fitness professional, what I really thought was going to be a concern was how do most of us transition our message, our learning curriculum online, because some people do it live. Some others do a canned filming, of workout routines. And I think that for, if you're doing HIIT training, then that would make a lot more sense that you can actually can that, record it, distribute it through some streaming platform, be it YouTube or whatever, or an in-house, inclusive streaming platform. But for yoga, I always thought that it would be a lot more difficult because of the interaction. Like you actually need that in order to do a good yoga class.
Right. And a lot of people, they don't want to turn their cameras on. They don't feel comfortable, and that's up to them. I always give them the option, hey, if you do have your cameras on, I can see you, I can adjust you physically. But if you decide you don't want to turn your camera on, that's your space. This is your safe space. Sure. And that's one thing that I always, before I start any class that I ever teach, I always say, this is your time. I've been to studios where teachers have told me, you're going too fast, or like, we'll get there soon. And it's their ego speaking, and it's made me feel so uncomfortable. So I always want to make sure that you have a safe space to do what you want. This is your time that you set out for yourself, right, for self-love and self-care, whatever that may look like. Sometimes self-care is crying in child's pose. For me, speaking for me. So I want to give them that safe space. And even though this is a smaller studio, I think right now in COVID times, this is what people need, this boutique setting where they feel like they have the space and not be squished into 65 people per room,
Sure. Are less people better? I mean, clearly more people are going to make more money, right? But as this is you're still confined to a mat. And the style, Ashtanga doesn't require you to go off the mat, but it does require a little bit more swinging.
Oh yeah.
So is it more beneficial for you to actually have less students so you can engage them in this complex style of yoga per se?
So mostly vinyasa. I dabbled into Ashtanga. I wouldn't say I'm a strong Ashtangi, which is like what they call Ashtanga yogis, but I have people in my community that are strong Ashtangis in the community that I learned from. Yeah. But with vinyasa, yes, I feel like intimately with any really yoga practice, you can see and take the time to look at people's alignment and what they're doing and how they're breathing. So yeah, I think with really any style of yoga, more intimate, the better if you can afford it.
We won't have a discussion about the business model and how that's going to look, but I understand it though. And actually, in speaking with you, I understand the point of what you're trying to produce. And I think that's great. I think it's a great business model as well. I would also probably say that I haven't seen outside, Bikram being the most popular one. And that in a hot yoga, as well as a standard yoga, is all around Houston. So the vinyasa, is there much of that here, like by comparison?
Yeah, so mostly everywhere I teach is vinyasa. So
Vinyasa is, I would say, the predominant yoga style in Houston.
Houston.
If I were to say for most of the studios, yeah.
It beats Bikram.
Yes, so Bikram isn't really around anymore. I mean, I'm sure you've seen
the documentary.
Right. I mean, that
changed
documentary, but also just because that set sequence, there is Baptiste style yoga, which is like big power yoga. If you've heard of that, it's a big studio in Houston. That's also from Baptiste, who he has a set sequence.
Okay.
So the set sequences are things that are practiced here, and depending on where you were trained, like I know a lot of people who are trained in that style and still teach vinyasa. But I would say vinyasa for me is the predominant style that I teach, and it's the one that I enjoy teaching.
So educate me. Set sequence is essentially a more marketable style. Is that the way I'm understanding it?
So you find consistency in the set sequence, right?
Okay.
You can see yourself grow in, you can see, oh, I'm more flexible through Warrior 3 because I see that my heel is lifted higher in this sequence because I did it yesterday at the exact same time at the exact same place. Vinyasa, Vinyasa translates to flow. So flow, basically each movement connects to another. So it's creative. And that's where I think my artist background comes into play, and which I really love is because to me, I'm coming up with some sort of a dance, a dance with yourself, a dance with, okay, what makes sense? What am I focusing on? If it's a peak pose or if it's, a flow for your hamstring specifically, you have to create these movements to find those specific parts of your body, or to work those parts of your body, or to stretch those parts of your body, versus a set sequence where you're like, okay, you're always going to stretch your hamstring in this, you're always going to hit the specific pose. And so I think it's more measurable.
Okay.
So people feel like, oh, I'm getting better because it's measured. Versus a vinyasa is so humbling because sometimes they'll go into a class and you'll be like, what the fuck is this? I don't even know. How do you even turn your body, contort your body like that?
Right.
It's something new every time.
Do you also offer flexibility coaching?
I do, yes. It's mostly through people who are, big gym buffs, similar to your body type, because they realize that, oh my goodness, yoga is really helping me in a different way. I'm able to lift heavier because I'm more flexible. I'm not moving from here. I now have this flexibility where I can lift higher from here. Yeah. And so it's really interesting to get different clients. I mean, I have an 89-year-old client that just got into downward facing dog, and I'm so proud, seeing him grow and become more flexible and seeing his body just transform. It's really amazing.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're definitely adding years onto his life. That's awesome. With your YouTube, be it yourself doing private yoga sessions or even through the companies, are you doing live, or is it still the canned recordings?
So for YouTube, it's usually recordings, and people's attention spans on the internet is really short. So I realize that the videos that I have that are 30 minutes or less are more successful. So a yoga class in person is usually about 45 minutes to an hour. And on YouTube, I realized, okay, well, people aren't sitting in front of their computers for that long, unless they're committed to a class that they paid for that's live streamed, right? So YouTube, it's mostly like for anyone who will type in, my neck hurts, what should I do? Yoga for back pain, or, yoga for flexibility through the low back, or whatever that is. And so it's more concentrated in specific things, I think my YouTube is. So I like to do, I choose videos on YouTube depending on one, people will reach out to me and say, hey, I've been having issues working at the computer. Can you help me open up my shoulders? Or, hey, I'm really wanting to learn this pose. Can you teach me certain things? And so that's why I love when people are putting an input for me, and my following, I'll say, hey, Natasha, I want to learn. And I'll put out a survey every once in a while. What do you want to see on YouTube? What is it that you're searching for that you can't find?
That's pretty cool. That's good. So you're doing your marketing, of course. And then you're also recording your sessions on YouTube, canned videos, not live, based on what it is that they're searching by. That's good market research.
I do some live video. So live stream, the yoga live stream is, especially with all the things that were going on this year with Black Lives Matter and now, Stop Asian Hate, all these things. It's important for me. I'm a part of this community, and it's my duty in my own life to create a space where people realize, okay, this is your safe space. I use the donations in those live streams to go to a specific platform.
Sure.
So Black Lives Matter Houston, specifically in the Houston area, or whatever it is. And so those are live. So I'll do it live on Instagram. I'll also do it live on YouTube.
Okay.
And a lot of people, a lot of yogis will, don't give your content away for free. People will take your content, don't give it away for free. But in my eyes, this is for the community. This is me taking a stance saying, this is what I feel like I can do for you in this time of COVID, where I can't be out and, you know, with signs, with, you know, I can't be out there because physically I have to take care of the people around me, myself. You know, I want to keep everyone safe. So that was my way of saying, here, this is a live streaming platform that you can go back and watch and go back and donate whenever you can.
Yeah, I think that fitness in itself is operationally therapeutic. It really is. And no matter what it is you decide to do. You know, some people think running is meditative, right. Others that think that yoga is lifting heavy weights, whatever that may be. But the platform to allow for people to be a part of the community, right. To communicate over with their instructors. They may have lost that due to COVID, due to the shutdowns. We weren't comparatively as impacted as other cities were in terms of the rallies. You know, we really didn't have that happen. And for that, I mean, it's probably a different discussion to have, but I do understand the nature of why one instructor or business owners or even content creators would want to do something within that time frame, within that space, just to have people be able to divert their attention, right. But then also help heal and work through that process. I mean, it's a beautiful thing. I think it's a good thing. There's other platforms that are available that also develop a fitness community, right. Where the fitness instructors have to do that for free. It's not something that they monetize from. Right. You can monetize alternatively, right. But for that platform, everything's free.
And that's the beauty about yoga. There are no absolute truths in yoga. And that's something that through your journey of yoga can be whatever you want it to be. And movement, especially in this time of chaos, movement for me gives me clarity. So if I don't move, I struggle with depression and anxiety. If I'm not moving once a day, whether it's going for a walk or, you know, jumping jacks or like, you know, moving my breath, moving my diaphragm, I feel that depression set in heavily. Mm-hmm. And that's something I share with my students all the time, you know, like this, while we talk about light, while, you know, we're smiling and happy in this moment, it's important to acknowledge your darkness. And that's why I love yoga so much, I think, is because I'm such a rebellious soul that yoga is whatever I want it to be. Being a yogi it fits in my life. It helps me in my life. And I think that's what a lot of people relate to.
I wasn't aware that you initially used yoga to heal. Mm-hmm. And I think that's very interesting. Where currently can they find you and where will they be able to find you soon?
So you can find me on Instagram, Natasha Gets Lost. I'm about to open up my soft opening for my yoga studio. It's going to be called Lost Lotus Yoga. Basically a creative, safe space for anyone to come and be their authentic self so that they can bloom without judgment. And that's the space that I'm trying to create here for the Houston community, is a place, an experience where they feel like their true authentic self is enough. And for someone growing up, you know, in such a strict household where I felt like no matter what I did wasn't enough, I was craving this sense of community, this sense of belonging. And I want to give that to the misfits, the people who feel like they don't belong, just really anyone who's searching for their true authentic path and journey through their lives.
Very cool. All right. So Instagram handles,
YouTube, youtube.com/c/Natasha Gets Lost. Also, the yoga site's about to launch for Lost Lotus Yoga and their Instagram. So keep on your toes. I'll let you know when that happens.
I'm excited for you. I think it's going to be very cool.
This is the first time that anyone's been in this space. So Qualified, the podcast, has taken this studio's virginity.
That's awesome. That's awesome. That's crazy. That's very cool. All right. So this has been Qualified, the podcast. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube. This is Natasha Ponciano with Natasha Gets Lost. Find her on YouTube, find her on Instagram, find us on Instagram at Qualified or QLAFD podcast, social media handles as well. We'll be looking for you. Like and subscribe down at the bottom, send comments as you need to. We'll be checking for them.